Good afternoon. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Planning and Development Council. Welcome, everybody. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets?
We have no regrets for this meeting.
So we have members who will join us in progress. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? I see none. Would you like to resolve into Committee of the Whole? Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Lapworth. All in favor? Opposed, if any. And we are now resolved into Committee of the Whole. This is out of custom for planning items. And Council, I'd like to ask how you would like to deal with the 3 consent items. Councillor Adams?
I'll give you a motion to approve the staff recommendations of the 3 consent items.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any. And those are adopted. Now you have a number of confidential consent items. Councillor, I don't think you were intending to move those, or were you?
I was not. I'm leaving it to the relevant ward members to respond to.
So, Council, now, how do you wish to deal with the confidential consent items? Councillor Dudek is moving the confidential consent items. She'd like to move in camera. So I'll just read your mind and assume it's for the purpose of receiving advice subject to solicitor-client privilege about matters that may or may not be, that might be in court, or you know what I mean.
Pertaining to which item?
Pardon?
Which item?
Councillor, is that all the items or just one of them? All of them. Actually, that's helpful to the clerk because, you know, we like to record what we're doing it for. I'll call the vote then. All in favor? Opposed, if any. I regret the inconvenience to the public, but I don't think this will take long, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Calling the public session of the Planning and Development Council back to order, and I thank the public for their indulgence for our brief disappearance. And Councillor Dudek, you have the floor.
Your Worship, I'd be pleased to move the confidential items. Is this the appropriate time that I would voice concerns?
So if this is
okay, that's
this is
what
when
I wanted
you would
to make
move
sure.
C1 to C7 as recommended,
Thank you.
and you would move recommendations 1 and 2 of C8.
1 and 2, correct. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. So that brings us to the public hearing item, the public meeting and recommendation report for the draft plan of subdivision for Fernbrook Homes. And the recommendation, of course, is that the comments from the public be received. The notice of council's decision reflect that the comments from the public have been appropriately.
That one we're dealing with at 7 o'clock.
Oh, I beg your pardon. We're skipping that till 7. Well, you can tune in at 7 to find the rest of it. Next, discussion item number 5, the update report on Health Science and Technology District application. And here we have a recommendation that the report be received and that council endorse the approaches set forth in the report with respect to a land use ratio of 3 primary jobs to 1 secondary job to 1 resident to be applied to achieve primacy of employment uses. Secondary jobs and number of residential units be limited by the application of the 3:1:1 land use ratio. A range of employment GFA of 0.35 FSI to 3.0 FSI as permitted in the North Oakville West Secondary Plan. Cash in lieu of parkland at a rate of 1 hectare per 500 units based on the provisions of Bill 73 be required. And that independent peer reviews of the traffic impact study and the financial impact study be undertaken at the applicant's expense. And that report PD 16565, which is this report, be forwarded to Halton Region for information. Madam Commissioner.
Mayor and members of council, I was going to start with a few brief remarks, and Paul Barrett has a much fuller presentation. So this has been a proposal that staff have been looking at actually for a number of years. The concept that was initially brought forward by Dr. Dable, who I'm sure you'll have met or will meet through the process, is actually a fabulous opportunity for the town. The concept of an innovation park that builds on the life science technology and technology, both in terms of technology and jobs, is key to implementing some of the town's life sciences sector, which has been identified in our economic development strategy. It also is an opportunity, given its location right beside the hospital, to leverage a $3 billion hospital and its public investment into that area. And thirdly, it also is an excellent opportunity to kickstart an employment area that is otherwise a little challenged given its location without a highway frontage. So the concept is a very good concept. This is a concept that both economic development staff and planning staff have supported and have, in light of that support, worked very closely with the region and the applicant in order to shape that concept into something that both the town and the region could support. It does require a regional plan amendment, so we've worked very closely with them. So in March of 2015, Council, you had endorsed criteria, even before an application came into us, that would shape the way in which we should review that application when indeed it did come in. So the concept is for a work, life, play community within an employment designated area. So the key to this proposal is it has to provide primarily for jobs, and then complementary living space could be provided in order to complement that overall community. So that's the concept. Throughout the development of the criteria, Dr. Dable and his team were certainly consulting with the industry, with other life science employers to see that that concept actually worked and made sense. So we've had a fair number of dialogue over the years. Finally, at the beginning of this year, that application was actually submitted by the applicant, and staff again have been working closely with the applicant and the region in order to shape and understand that proposal. It is a very complex proposal. It will require several different triggers to ensure that primacy of employment lands is maintained and the scale of development in this area is in keeping with the overall structure of the town, so it doesn't in effect create a growth node that undermines the other structures within our overall plan. So those two key components are important for the application. So this application has been treated uniquely, and I wanted to make sure that you had known that because of its link to our economic development strategy. Staff have provided input to it. We've met almost on a weekly basis, either with the region or with the applicant, to try and shape this proposal moving forward. So we have provided a considerable amount of time in order to get it to where we think it should be. So given the complexity of the proposal, the purpose of the report that you have to you today is in line with the approach that we used with bringing you criteria in March of 2015. It's to bring you how we've taken those criteria and moved them into performance metrics and key elements, so that as we continue to process this application, we have a clear understanding of Council's expectations. So we're bringing you this report in order so that you can see the directions that we're taking. This is not a decision report at all on the application. It is simply to make sure that we're in line with Council's expectations, asking you to endorse those criteria so that we can then move forward with the next elements. Based on the work plan that the applicant had agreed to when we started this process, we would go through these steps, and then they would provide a more detailed or updated site plan application, as well as the impact studies on transportation and servicing. So this step in the process we saw as being key because it informs the design that will come in later on, and it also informs the impact analysis. So we wanted to make sure that we were clear and had some clarity from Council in terms of the expectations on going forward. So with those brief remarks, I will turn it over to Paul Barrett, who will outline for you those requirements.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of Council. A regional and local official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision application has been submitted to permit a health science and technology district within the health-oriented mixed-use node. This presentation will provide a brief overview of the update report, which can be found on page 29 to 64 of tonight's agenda. The subject lands are located at the northeast corner of 3rd Line and Dundas Street West, are designated employment district, and are part of the health-oriented mixed-use node. On May 11th, 2015, Council endorsed the principles set out in the health-oriented mixed-use node staff report that are to guide the review and evaluation of applications to implement the health-oriented mixed-use node as contemplated in the North Oakville West Secondary Plan. Halton Region Council also endorsed similar principles to guide the review of applications to implement the health-oriented mixed-use node in June of 2015. The applicant seeks approval to permit the lands to be developed for a health, science, and technology district. The development is proposed to be divided into 3 phases and result in 4.5 million square feet gross leasable area, with building heights ranging from 8 stories to 32. The table on page 5 of the staff report reproduced in this slide provides an overview of the allocation of proposed uses and sizes for the proposed development at full build-out. If I could draw your attention to the 3 main categories being primary jobs, secondary jobs, and residential, and I'll speak to that a little bit later in the presentation. Regional and town staff have worked with the applicant to develop a work plan to guide the required study updates and review of the subject application. The applicant is currently within the constraint phase of the technical review, whereby the applicant is preparing updated studies based on the approved terms of reference. Once this is complete and the supporting studies are satisfactory, the findings of the technical review will guide the remaining portions of the design stage, which would typically include matters such as urban design, architectural plans, tree canopy, pedestrian circulation plans, and a comprehensive resubmission of the application would be made by the applicant. At that point, the application would follow a typical application review process that you're familiar with, which would include public engagement through public information meetings and a standard statutory public meeting. At this point in the technical review, staff are seeking council endorsement of more detailed metrics which implement the principles endorsed by council in May of 2015 to assist in the constraint phase, design phase, and overall review of this application. In terms of the more detailed metrics, they're listed on this slide, and I'll start by focusing on the first 2, which are subordinate residential and maximum intensity of development. The principles endorsed by council in May of 2015 speak to establishing baseline employment targets, achieving a minimum density of employment, and considering a residential component which is subordinate to the primary land uses and linked to minimum employment targets. Also providing a trigger to ensure that primary uses will be achieved prior to or concurrent with secondary and subordinate uses. And also maximum subordinate residential is to be based on the performance of primary and secondary employment. Region and town staff have developed a model to quantify and measure the performance of this criteria. The model establishes a 3-to-1-to-1 ratio, and if you'll recall the chart that was brought up a few slides ago with the primary, secondary, and residential land uses, what the 3-to-1-to-1 ratio means is 3 primary jobs to 1 secondary job to 1 resident or person. So the model establishes that ratio, and it provides a basis for linking primary employment to subordinate residential. It also sets a minimum and maximum employment target based on approved secondary plan and the overall urban structure of the town. And thirdly, it sets the maximum extent of subordinate residential based on the performance of the primary land use. The 3-to-1-to-1 model staff developed provides a range of employment based on council-endorsed principles and the approved secondary plan, inclusive of a maximum subordinate residential component. This chart shows the current output of the model based on the current data available. The 3-to-1-to-1 metric was developed to implement the May 2015 Council-endorsed criteria provincial policy, and it is also necessary to consider the proposal outside of a municipal comprehensive review and ensure that the proposed development is of a scale which retains the town's approved urban structure. Staff are seeking council endorsement of 3 metrics. The first is a 3-to-1-to-1 ratio. The second is limiting secondary jobs and residential by the 3-to-1-to-1 ratio. And the third is a range of employment GFA of 0.035 to 3 FSI based on the provisions of the approved secondary plan. The third metric is parkland. As Council is aware, the current parkland dedication bylaw applies town-wide and requires 5% of land or 1 hectare per 300 units, whichever is greater. It is applied on a consistent basis for new development. However, in this case, the applicant is requesting consideration of the application of cash in lieu of parkland through a reduced rate, recognition of publicly accessible private squares, prepayment, or other mechanisms. Since residential is not currently a permitted use in the secondary plan, the in-force secondary plan does not have the same residential parkland policy. However, Council did approve these standards through OPA 306, which is for Palermo Village North. However, that is currently under appeal at the Ontario Municipal Board. Since the application of the town's parkland policies may impact the design of the development and an operative alternative residential parkland policy may need to be added to the official plan, staff are seeking council endorsement of the following more detailed metric in advance of starting the design phase of the work plan. And the fourth item is supporting studies. The subject development proposal based on region and town estimates would total approximately 11,000 people and jobs at full build-out. For comparison, this would result in more people and jobs than the employment target for the North Oakville West Secondary Plan area, which is about 10,200 jobs. Accordingly, the approved terms of reference for the supporting studies has been enhanced over and above a typical development application. It is expected that an independent peer review of the transportation impact study will be undertaken at the applicant's expense. The applicant will also be responsible to provide an update to the North Oakville financial impact study in accordance with approved terms of reference. This will quantify the expected full life cost of this proposed form of growth. This study will also be subject to a peer review at the applicant's expense. Staff are seeking council endorsement of the following criteria. The fifth item is affordable housing. Council endorsed criteria number 5 from the May 2015 staff report provides for affordable housing to be provided as part of a complete community. The provision of affordable housing is also required by the Halton Region official plan. Staff are anticipating that the applicant will be submitting an affordable housing strategy in order to demonstrate that the regional plan objectives have been met. At this time, it is premature to seek further council direction on this item until there has been an opportunity to review the affordable housing strategy. However, it may be necessary to report back to council on the provision of affordable housing in the future. The last item is urban design. As part of the council-endorsed development criteria, the design of the proposed development is to be consistent with the design principles and objectives of the Livable by Design Manual. Based on the latest circulation of the application, there are urban design concerns including tower design, integration of the development with the surrounding context, and the impact of structured parking on the public realm. At this time, it is premature to seek further council direction on this item, since the applicant has not commenced the design phase of the work plan yet. However, staff intend to implement the Livable by Design manual consistent with the May 2015 council-endorsed principles. In conclusion, Your Worship, staff put forth the following recommendation as shown for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Councillor Elgar has questions.
Thank you very much for the report. I appreciate all the points you did highlight. I guess when you say 311, can you give us a perspective of what that means? Because build-out is 11,000 people up there. So how does, what are the numbers? Because I think a lot of people don't understand what you say when you say 311.
So, for instance, the 3-to-1 ratio, the primary type of employment, it could include an office job, research and development, a job that's part of the innovation park. A secondary job would be, it could include a retail type job for ground floor commercial, and the remaining one would be one person.
Okay.
So in terms of how to quantify that, for instance, if there was 5,000 people in jobs, there'd be 3,000 primary jobs, there'd be 1,000 secondary jobs, and then there'd be 1,000 residents.
Yeah, in this case, there's 6,600 primary, 2,200 secondary, and 2,200 residents living up in that location, correct?
That would be based on the current model output.
The model we are talking about, the 3-to-1-to-1.
Yes.
Now, with regard to parkland, I know I heard the commissioner say earlier, in Oakville, live, work, and play. If we don't have parkland at all, where are the 2,200 residents that actually live there going to play? Because we all know Oakville likes green space, and I'm just wondering how that would work. And how many, if we didn't take cash in lieu, how many hectares of green space would they have to give up? Because in total, they only have a little over 15 hectares of land in total. So I'm just trying to get a perspective, if you can help me.
I'll just speak to the requirement for cash in lieu. And there is significant parklands in the area. So our community services staff and our parks and open space staff have looked at what is available in the area and felt that a better way to deliver parkland was to take the cash in lieu rather than require it on that specific site.
This has nothing to do with any of the natural heritage system we have, correct? I just
No.
want to make sure, so yeah, this excludes all of the natural heritage system?
Yes, it does. And then the parkland I'm speaking to directly is the 100 acres just to the north.
Yes.
That is that piece which is exclusive of the natural heritage. It sits at the south end of the Glenorchy lands. So that is a fairly intense recreational or open space area, parkland in the area that's available to these residents.
Right, and it's parkland, not NHS.
That's right.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to be very clear on. I just trying to, under the municipal, like we have not done a complete municipal review, and that's why we're asking for a lot of studies to be done also, I guess, correct?
That's correct, Councillor Elgar.
Now, under phase one, would it still, everything would be phased as a 3-1-1, or would it start out with a 1-1-3 to get it going?
Each phase would need to meet that ratio or exceed it.
Okay, that's sounds fair to me. Now, as far as the, and I know it's very preliminary, but that has the potential to an awful lot of traffic on Dundas and Third Line. Is the region in charge of looking at that, and will they be commenting? Because this is a huge impact.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the region will be reviewing that traffic impact study, and they've also commented on the terms of reference for the update. And the enhanced study will be reviewing traffic impact on a macro scale and a micro scale, using simple terms. Usually a development application will look at intersections more on a micro scale. We'll be reviewing traffic impact in a much larger area and a specific area.
Okay, I appreciate that. It is a very exciting project and undertaking, I must say. I think it's one of the biggest I've ever heard of in Oakville. And when I hear the 8 stories to 32 stories high, though, I think there may be a few people very, very concerned that live up in that area to the south, because I think the hospital is how many stories?
It's 8 stories.
It's 8 stories, yeah, and we're talking 32 stories in this case, correct? It's a kind of a large focal point for sure. Okay, I look forward to to any other comments, and at the appropriate time, Your Worship, I would move a motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Are there other questions? Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Your Worship. On page 13, there was some comment made. I find it very interesting, and it might be something new that I've never realized before. It says, may result in a more urban form and may include full or partial private ownership of stormwater management. Could you give me a little more on that? Clarity? Thank you. Your Worship, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's a number of stormwater management strategies currently being reviewed by staff. That is one scenario where the ownership would be split, so there'd be a public section of an open stormwater management pond, and there'd be a private section of the stormwater management pond, which could be under an urban square or sidewalks that are privately owned by a condo corporation. And staff recognize that there may be a need to report to council in the future if that type of a scenario were to proceed.
I'll wait for the details on that when it comes forward. Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Can staff just discuss the 1 to 500 ratio and whether there's any issues around precedent setting that would impact any other areas that are currently in process?
Though the 1 to 500 is the current now requirement enforced by Bill 73. So no, we didn't, Parkland, I think you need to look at in each individual site to see what's around it, what it's provided, and to understand then how this new site fits within that context. So I wouldn't see a precedent being set by this approach on this application. It is specific to its area.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Lishina.
Thank you very much. My question is just quickly regarding the starting the build. Will there be a necessity for a percentage of leasing to be completed before any build starts? Or is it build it and they will come?
Councillor, that's never a part of our regulation. That's a market-determined issue. It's up to the builder. Normally, if you're depending on bank finance, they like to see 70 or 80% of pre-sales before they'll finance.
So there's no issue with us approving the whole plan, and then it could be 5-10 years before it happens?
It's almost always a long-term, every subdivision, any large approval that we give, you'll know from your own ward that they take years to build out.
So it's the same case.
All right, then, Council, I will go to the, Councillor Hutchins.
Thank you. This 1 to 500, is it 1 to 500 units, right? What does that roughly work in as hectares per thousand? Because it used to be considered good planning, as I understood it, that you put about 2.2 hectares per thousand of population.
We haven't done that calculation, but as I understand, our Parkland master plan does look at the 2.2 hectares per thousand population, yes, as their standard in our master plan. But it is recognized that you can't achieve that standard strictly on the basis of the Planning Act requirements of how you collect it. So I assume with the drop in the requirement to the 1 to 500 for the cash component, you're not achieving the 2.2.
Okay, so there's no way of collecting more land based on best practices of planning because of the recent change? Okay,
Councillor, there's a
Thank you.
thing called Bill 73.
I know.
All right, Council, I will call the delegations now. Councillor Knoll, you look troubled.
I'm trying to understand how the stormwater management plans can be reconfigured. I'm looking at the 3D drawing versus the topographical drawing, and I don't understand how one can be inset in the other. Is it underground?
Planners, is there some division of use and feature, and what's going on with that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, much of the stormwater management plan you see on that figure is below grade, and my understanding is it's located in concrete cisterns, many of them in series, which would be under a potential public square type of a feature, and then there'd be a relatively small open water section which would have a permanent pool, which you can also see on that drawing, which makes it look disproportionately smaller than what it is today.
That helps, thank you.
Perhaps you recall the presentation we had a number of years ago from Minto, where in building an all-green development, they were using cisterns, very large cisterns for rainwater. So, Council, now I'll begin calling the delegations. We have one listed delegation, if I'm not misinformed, and that's Eldon Theodore from MHBC Planning, here on behalf of the proponent. Welcome, Mr. Theodore. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, members of council. Is there a way I can launch my presentation? I don't know what the mouse is here.
That's the one.
Right here. Which way, how do I click forward? Oh, yeah. Again, thank you for providing me with the opportunity to speak, and I'd also like to acknowledge Dr. Joseph Dablé, who's also in the room tonight. This presentation is really an opportunity for the Oakville Green team to convey elements of the proposal that we felt really weren't highlighted in the report that was presented to council. It's important for us to highlight how this innovation district is not your typical development, and we hope that we can help to broaden the discussion around the proposal and assist council in the ultimate decision tonight. I wanted to talk briefly about the context. These lands, obviously, they've been a focus of job creation and innovation with a linkage to the proposed hospital for several years. The seeds were planted for an innovation district with the approval of the North Oakville West Secondary Plan, the hospital development, the visioning sessions conducted by the town, and the direction from the town's 2009 economic development strategy to focus on life science district in this area. Dr. Dablé purchased these lands and continued to build on the town's vision with his own vision, creativity, insight, and experience. He worked with Jan Corneal to develop an initial plan and presented that vision for initially a 5 million square foot innovation district in 2014. That vision was embraced, and this gave Dr. Dablé the confidence to move forward with making the innovation district a reality. Fast forward to today, Oakville Green has assembled a multidisciplinary team comprised of a number of professionals with expertise including Gensler, MHPC, WSP, Walter Fady, and Ellis Don. The team was challenged by Dr. Dablé to think in a way that is not traditional, in a way that embraced sustainability and innovation to create a place that is not the norm. We were not creating a business park, we were creating an innovation district, and that was the marker. So with the leadership of Gensler and their work on innovation districts, we researched a number of districts in Canada and the United States to inform the district design and support our submitted documents. Those districts included South Lake Union in Seattle, South Boston Innovation District, North Carolina Research Triangle Park, and Quartier de l'Innovation in Montreal. So the district will be a world-class community that will attract and accommodate the greatest minds of health, science, and technology. This district challenges our traditional notions of employment built form, traditional employment densities and jobs, traditional traffic patterns, and traditional planning thinking. In the end, this is not your grandfather's business park. We're trying to create a complete community. This district will be desirable, mixed use, and compact. The design of the district creates a unique urban environment community that allows employees to work, live, and play in the same community. The limited residential uses will be accommodated and will accommodate employees through a range of unit sizes. Having residential uses will attract more young people to the area, as evidenced in other districts that we've evaluated. The mix of uses in the district will ensure it is active throughout the day, animating the community both during work hours and in the evening. In terms of jobs, as noted previously, the district challenges traditional employment densities on jobs. The Town and Region's 311 assumptions estimates 9,640 jobs will be created. We believe this is a conservative estimate. Based on our research on the types of jobs we are attracting to the district and the space that they require, we believe 12,620 jobs are achievable, 11,211 of those being high-paying primary jobs. And those would include research, development and incubation facilities, institutional uses including post-secondary education, medical and health-related professional jobs, and office employment. In terms of connections, the compact mixed-use nature of the district will decrease employees' commute times and will encourage other modes of transportation such as walking, cycling, and transit. Pedestrian pathways will be a priority in the district, providing safe and accessible pedestrian routes to, from, and within the district. The proposed streets will connect to the existing street network. Existing transit routes will be utilized, and new stops and transit infrastructure will be incorporated within. And the district will be transit-ready for the Dundas Street rapid transit. When looking at synergies, the proposed mix of uses and the proximity to the hospital maximizes opportunities for innovation and collaboration with the health and technology fields. The district will maximize connectivity and flows and provide for a diversity of uses that supports and complements each other. Oakville Green has had positive meetings with the hospital and will be entering into a memorandum of understanding, solidifying shared interests and opportunities. Our hope is that the next cure for a disease is discovered in this district because of these synergies. When looking at form and design, the design of the office and residential buildings is tailored towards the market needs for knowledge-based industries and research facilities related to health science and technology sectors. The district will maximize the potential for available ground area by providing shared underground and podium parking. Mid and high-rise buildings will be oriented to maximize natural light and minimize shadow and wind impacts in the district. Finally, the transition of building heights will minimize impacts and shadows on the surrounding land uses, including the residential areas to the south. And we've already made efforts to reduce building heights as part of our collaboration with town and regional staff. In terms of spaces and places, and when we talk about parkland, the buildings are connected through publicly accessible ground-level urban open spaces, which will create places of congregation and achieve a sense of place for the district. This represents the urban parks that breathe life into the district, areas that will be programmed for cafes, outdoor markets, ice skating rinks, public art, people watching, or other social enhancements. When looking at mobility solutions, the district will fully embrace and integrate alternative modes of transportation which will reduce vehicular traffic use in the area. This will be managed by Oakville Green through the Innovation Hub, which is the central point of the district, offering solutions that can include car share and rideshare services, car stacking services internal, shuttles to the GO station, bike share services, bike shelter storage and shower facilities, promotion of transit and even the option to provide for transit passes, and ensuring accessible and safe pedestrian movement throughout. Oakville Green is currently investigating digital solutions that would manage these services through one single outlet, whether that be an app or something to that effect. In terms of stormwater, Oakville Green's team has proposed an innovative urban stormwater pond that will be a feature within the district while continuing to collect all required storm flows within the area and watershed. Redesigning the pond is a costly but absolutely necessary change in order to achieve a logical and functional site design for the district. On sustainability and natural heritage, the district is using net zero sustainable principles to influence the design and balance the impact of construction through the lifespan of the district. Some of the big sustainable initiatives being proposed include LEED certification, innovative green stormwater retention, green roofs on top of podiums, and geothermal energy. The production and integration of the adjacent, the protection and integration of the adjacent natural heritage system will also occur through proposed linkages and trails to the greater system. And finally, implementing this legacy, the district will take the assets of the area, both economic, physical, and networking, and blend those to create a node within the town that will become a legacy, a place that will attract knowledge-based jobs in the thousands, a place where people will live and work. We recognize that the district will not occur overnight. The district will be phased, where each phase will include the right mix of uses supportive of the district and the 3-1-1 model. So just to summarize, 43 seconds left. We recognize that we're working within a prescribed process. We also know that the traditional notions of planning are evolving. For example, the province is now encouraging employment areas to be mixed-use areas, centers of activity and diversity, including specific reference to innovation hubs. We ask that Council provide the guidance and direction to staff to enable flexible controls to achieve the town's and region's vision for a thriving district. And lastly, we ask that Council receive tonight's report for information and allow our team to continue to work with town and regional staff, help achieve this innovation district for the town. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, you got two or
Councilman
three.
Hatt.
You've hit the jackpot. Councilors Elgar, Adams, and Hutchins to start. Councilor Elgar.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the exciting presentation of what could happen here. You go back a few slides, you'll see you had a numbers up there, a numbers slide, which totaled 15,777 people. And in our staff report, it spells out that there will be 11,000 people at build-out. And I'm confused at how we got from 11,000 to 15,777, because that's a 43.4% increase. What's happening here?
So for clarity to you, Mr. Mayor, and for clarity to Council, the discrepancy falls between the assumptions that form the foundation of the 311 calculator. So it's how many jobs are actually being determined for particular types of uses. So at this point, we haven't come to a level of comfort where we believe the numbers actually will reflect the type of jobs that we see in the district. And we are continuing to work with town and regional staff to try and find that end goal so that this model, when implemented, does not hinder any potential for future growth down the road.
So, but our staff, we're saying the 311 model where we would have 6,600 jobs primary. You're coming up with 11,221.
That's right.
That's a big jump.
It's based on the assumptions that are based in the model.
I see. But you've got more residents, 3,148 instead of the 2,200. So there's still work to be done, I guess.
Yeah.
Trying to get these numbers in line.
And Councillor, if you take a look at that, what our approach to it is that we want to seek as many primary jobs as possible, as many high-paying jobs as possible. So you'll see it's not the 60 or the 3, it's actually at the 71 for the primary jobs. And the residential still stays at the 1, which is just below 20%. So really, we are looking to focus more on the primary jobs as opposed to the secondary jobs, which could be retail or grocery store or long-term care types of uses. That's really the differences that show that shift.
Oh, yeah, no, it jumps off the page.
We see that as the most important component.
I would agree it is. And what I really liked is what I heard from staff, and I just want you to concur that, in fact, the ratio that we are asking for, you would be following that ratio by phase so that we don't have to worry about somebody coming in and having, oh, we'll do all the residential first and then we'll bring a few jobs in?
Absolutely, and we spoke with staff about that, about how that would be implemented, and I believe it was intimated by staff that there would be triggers, and part of those triggers would be you need to build a certain amount of non-residential floor area before you could see any permits issued for residential units, and we're comfortable with that restriction. It makes sense in terms of protecting for the employment. It's just how you get there.
So could you take just 1 minute, or maybe you don't have the details yet, to explain the first phase of the development, what in fact you would be building?
So the first phase, we're looking at 2.5 million square feet of development. And within that first phase, you'd see 5,869 jobs.
And
with
what year would
primary
they be?
jobs.
Oh, 5,700?
5,869 jobs in the primary category.
Okay.
1,080 jobs in the secondary category.
Okay.
And 1,702 people in the residential category.
Wow. And what year are those jobs? That's the first phase. Now, when in your planning would that phase be complete?
I'm going to have to dredge my memory on this.
Just ballpark.
I don't have that tape, but I think
like-
it's, we're looking at 2021, 2024.
Wow, okay. 2021 or 2024, like in that
Because
range?
what we would do is we would develop phase 1 and subphase, so 1A and 1B, ultimately ending into 2024. But each subphase would also follow that same mix of people and jobs.
So are you hoping that the Oakville Hospital will become a learning and teaching hospital, which it is not now?
Actually, we've been advised by the Oakville Hospital that they are a teaching hospital. We met with them, and when we had our meeting, they said that it's actually been designed for that purpose.
Oh, okay, design, but is it it's not operational yet then?
I couldn't confirm for them, but I know that ability is there.
Yeah.
As a member of the board of that hospital,
Okay,
I could
sorry.
let you know that it's well down the path and already has programs in place leading to that final destination. So the affiliation with McMaster University was announced.
That was what I was going to ask next, so you've answered my question. So
so
they are
you're
tied in
going
with
there.
Mac. Yeah, okay.
And the steps are already in place.
Okay, no, that's, you know, I hope we get it resolved. I'm a little concerned about 32 stories at this point, and I think you'll find a lot of residents might be concerned about just this sheer height, but I guess as we get more information, we will cross that bridge at a later point. So I thank you very much for the presentation and the information. And I like the numbers to date.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much for the presentation. First of all, would you allow us to have this presentation circulated to council?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Maybe our clerks can handle that later on.
This presentation also includes my notes, so you can, it has the additional
your
speaking
speaking
points
notes.
that yes.
Thank you very much. That would be useful. So I have a couple of questions for you. I've got this note from Werfolds here. Can you address that?
I can speak to the points on it. I didn't prepare it. Werfolds prepared that on behalf of the client. But it's the simple matter is that if this report, the recommendations in this report are endorsed tonight, it will put our application in a framework in which we cannot get out of. Right now, at least I believe, and I hope the staff believe, that there is positive discussions back and forth in which to how do we achieve this district. As I had intimated earlier, there's still some matters to be clarified when it comes to the assumptions that develop into the 3-to-1-to-1. This report was prepared on this assumption, but we actually had not seen the assumptions table until closer to when it was going to be released to the public. So we've had some time to look at it, and we obviously want to have some further discussions to make sure that the final product makes sense for everyone and implements what everyone is looking to achieve. But to make a decision tonight where the 3-to-1-to-1 is embraced and the caps are embraced removes that flexibility, which is what is necessary to achieve a successful innovation district.
So as I read it and I looked at what we're being asked to endorse, you appear to have concerns about the constraint of using a 3-1-1 ratio specifically. You might prefer a slightly different ratio, but directionally you're okay with the concept. Is that?
For clarity, we are fine with the ratio. We're just not fine with how employment is calculated in the ratio, depending on certain types of employers and certain types of uses.
So the definition of what is included in the 3 and in the first one, you've got concerns around that. I'm looking at your 71% and 9% here. You've got 80%, which is pretty close to the 3-1-1, but you don't have, you've got 3 plus 1. You have a 4-to-1 ratio, but you move the 3 and the 1 around a bit.
Yes.
So
yeah, correct.
Directionally, you're okay with it, but it's how you add it up is a bit different. So would you prefer? So is it that you would prefer us to provide an endorsement of the concept, but not necessarily that particular ratio?
I think it's more that we would prefer that council receive it for information, be educated with the information that has been received, understand the process that is currently going on, but allow staff to come back at a later point with their recommendation when the fulsome information has been received.
So I think our staff are looking for some direction from us to say, yeah, we're okay with the concept that's being proposed in general, and we recognize that there's going to be some back and forth still to happen between now and when it might come to fruition. So I think we, as a council, need to give our staff, and therefore you, the broad brush strategic endorsement of the concept, and whether we agree that 3-1-1 is exactly the right number, I imagine there's some wiggle room around that.
And through you, Councillor, I think it's the wiggle room that is most important to us.
Right. So I'll come back to our staff for some discussion of that point afterwards. Then there's this issue of the density, or the 3 FSI that you've got a concern with. What is the FSI that you're seeking?
Currently, the FSI, when you look at the project in its entirety, I don't have that number on me right now, but I know it is well in excess of 3 times FSI.
5, 6, 10?
Probably in the range of 4.
Thank you. And then you're seeking a wait-and-see approach to the 1 to 500. Is that what I read in your letter? It's not, I understand it's not you who wrote the letter, but.
Yeah. I think when it comes to the 1 to 500, there's really there's really only one option, and that's cash in lieu, which we think is a little unfair, because part of this plan is to create a series of public parks and open spaces that in other municipalities they've recognized, and they give discounts for parkland dedication, knowing that they provide what you need in an urban space for life and for place for people to escape and relax, but would not be, based on the discussions today, and the policy today, would not be recognized, but would still be required of us to provide.
Okay. And the last point was the issue of whether or not and who should pay for traffic impact studies and the financial impact studies, and whether they should be paid for by the applicant or not, or if they should be undertaken at all. What's your take on that? Can you expand on that issue? Or?
It's not really, that item is not really an issue. It's just it's a matter of fact. So we weren't curious as to why it was even in there. We knew that we'd have to do that anyways.
I guess the question is whether they're done for you directly or whether they're being done on behalf of the town.
And our team had always anticipated that our work would be peer reviewed, and we don't anticipate anything different than that item.
Okay. At the appropriate time, I'd like to ask our staff some questions, please.
Councillor Hutchins.
Thank you. Councillor Adams, you asked a lot of great questions, and a couple of them I was going to ask too, but so I'll waive it. Thank you.
We'll let you off the hook. So if I could be permitted to ask a question. Oh, wait, Councillor Lischina, you're next. Then I'll go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Theodore, for the presentation. In one of your, I think, first or second slide, you had discussed basically historical data where you went to other places to look for innovation parks. And I'm assuming these are the successful ones. I guess what I want assurances is that you've looked at unsuccessful ones and learned from that, and that wouldn't happen here.
To you, Councillor, yes, we did. We looked at innovation districts that had similar mixes to what we were trying to do, and obviously ones that were not failing, of ones that were successful or in the process of being successful or moving in the right direction. And we quantified those variables and the mixes coming out of those to be able to inform the design that we came up with. And a lot of that leadership came from Gensler Architecture out of the United States, who helped direct us to these examples and helped us kind of take that first step to evaluating them and coming to that conclusion.
Thank you, Councillor. So maybe I could be permitted a question. So as I understand your remarks about 311, your numbers that you put up where you had 70% and so on are, as Councillor Adams called it, 4 to 1 with, jiggery pokery between the 3 and the 1, the old 3-1. But 3 and 1 were, you're going to raise the 3 to 4 and reduce the 1. Would you be happier if we said words to the effect of at least 3 primary jobs, so we'd be adding the concept at least, to up to 1 secondary job and not more than 1 resident? So we'd preserve the 311 overall, but give you flexibility between the primary and secondary, but only in the direction of increasing primary, not in the direction of decreasing primary from 3 and boosting secondary. In other words, to go with the spirit of the slide you put up, would you be satisfied if we changed the language to reflect the spirit of the slide you put up?
I don't think there'd be an issue with that, Mr. Mayor, only because what you've described is the spirit of the 311 calculator. If you can achieve more primary jobs, it's a great thing. The calculator does not want to see more than one when it comes to the ratio for secondary jobs, and it does not want to see more than one when it comes to residential.
Okay, so with that, I'll thank you very much for your information and being here tonight. And council is going to restrict this to table and turn to staff. We have a couple of questions for staff here now. Thank you very much, Mr. Theodore. So the big question for staff is, could we be happy? Could we be just as happy with the phraseology I just floated, which is at least 3 primary jobs to up to 1 secondary job to not more than 1 resident? Or words to achieve the same, I think my meaning is plain, to give them the room to increase primary while reducing secondary, but no latitude on the no room to increase residential.
Through your worship, we would be happy with that. That's in line with our thinking.
Thank you very much. Councillor Elgar, would you, I know you've reserved the rights to move the matter. Would you be willing to do that?
No, absolutely. I think that's probably the best recommendation we could possibly do to give the municipality what we really want, and that is jobs. And I'd just like to say, if maybe a lot of councillors weren't around here, but there were a few of us around here in the early 2000s when this whole area was going to be commercial, or industrial, I should say, and that was because of the intermodal transit way that was going to be coming there with the intermodal transit in Milton, and that's why we're going to need it for repairs of big equipment. So it's quite a step forward. This we have come here in Oakville, I must say, at this particular juncture in time. So
a better alternative has emerged.
So at the appropriate time, I am pleased to move the recommendation with the modifications made by Mayor Burton. I think it's perfect wording.
Well, I think I'm willing to accept the motion and then turn to Councillor Adams to ask his question.
Thank you very much. I think we've dealt very well with the 311 question, so that's already done, and I'm happy with that outcome. I had this question about the FSI. So the applicant appears to be concerned about the limitation of the 0.35 FSI to 3 FSI as permitted in the North Oakville West Secondary Plan range. And they appear to be looking for something higher, and that, I presume, goes along with some of the height requirements that they've got in their design plans. Is there a particular reason why we wish to limit to the 0.35 to 3 range?
Through you, your worship. So in reviewing this application, we're mindful of Oakville's urban structure, and we don't want to see another growth area emerging in that area. Otherwise, we have to deal with it as part of the municipal comprehensive review, like we've done with other property. So we're trying to keep the North Oakville structure in place as a kind of the brackets or the parameters around this proposal, so we can fit it into the context of Oakville's overall urban structure. And that's why the limit of the 3.0 FSI.
So I'm a little concerned that that particular restriction may be something that might ultimately cause a killing of the application unnecessarily, where there might be some willingness to modify that particular piece if it was done in a way that was fully studied and reviewed. So we have the requirement to, or the desire to have, traffic impact studies and financial impact studies, and there probably also needs to be a
through your worship.
an OP review, but
in thinking of, so I'll just come back to the point I made before. We're very delicately trying to insert this into the fabric of Oakville's urban structure, and the metric of 3.0 FSI, which already exists, we can rely on that in terms of discussions at the board potentially about how it does fit into the urban structure. Otherwise, we're into a new growth area, and I think we would be doing something different then with respect to this application. So from our standpoint, it's critical that it keep within that range.
so we've had discussions in the when we're talking about our review of our OP, we've had discussions about what's the existing FSI that's being built And generally speaking, the FSIs that are being built are at the low end of the ranges that we've provided. And so here there's a request for a build of something higher than the range of FSI. If we allowed a higher FSI here, would it be making up for the low FSIs that we've seen built in all the other applications in North Oakville?
Sorry, through your worship, if we allow to get higher, you'll see the highest density in all of Oakville at that location, ones that's not contemplated by the current structure of our plan. So it would become difficult. I mean, the numbers are large. It's a big application. There's no question about it. We're talking several million square feet and full build-out. Simply put, it's not the plan for that to occur at that scale, at that location. And it will dominate the landscape.
Councillor, there's another path for the applicant and for you. If you wanted to change the FSI, the only safe and prudent way to do it, considering all that is before us, would be to do the urban structure review. That would delay the applicant. A faster and perhaps more congenial path would be to approve this, let phase one go at this level, and the FSI can be reviewed if, as and when down the line the necessary urban structure review is done for the North Oakville plan.
And I think that's sort of where I was heading, because it does need to be studied. I don't think that council shouldn't just change the FSI. It does require a thoughtful process. And so I guess my question to our staff is, what would an appropriate process look like for this case to allow things to continue and to leave it open for the discussions to happen that obviously this needs to go through a whole bunch of additional discussions between staff, the region, and the applicant before anything's going to happen. What time or what process would be required to allow appropriate studies of a different FSI to happen?
So through your worship, so in my view, the only appropriate mechanism would be as part of the urban structure review, as part of that 5-year cycle that we're undertaking right now. That's the vehicle to enter new growth areas in the community of Oakville. So we're trying to avoid that by allowing it to go the absolute upper limit of the current policy regime to yield as big a first phase as possible.
Has the applicant suggested that they want to have that studied through that process?
I'm not aware of that. I believe that they're coming in, you should ask them through your worship, but I believe the idea is in their planning justification report, they present their view of how that could be accommodated. I think the question's better asked of them.
Would add, if I could, just one comment to Mark's comments is that the urban structure review that the town is currently undertaking cannot actually be put in place until the region has completed their work. So there is a timing issue. The region will not likely finish their OP review into 19, 20, or 21. So the whole objective of looking at this application was the applicant wanted to look at it within its current policy structure that we have right now, without raising the question of a conversion of employment lands, and within our current urban structure was really the town's requirement to be able to have that happen. So with those kind of boundaries and the time constraints, we felt the best way to proceed was putting a cap at the 3 FSI for just the employment GFA. That keeps intact the employment, the North Oakville secondary plan, so then we could proceed with this application at this point in time based on the criteria council had approved in May of 2015.
Does the 3 FSI only apply to the employment, and the residential and the commercial piece are in addition to? And are we talking apples to apples when the applicant said they want 4? Are they including other elements beyond what we're including when we say 3?
So our
are we communicating properly?
Yeah, our 3 includes the GFA associated with the primary jobs and the GFA associated with the secondary jobs. It does not include the GFA associated with the residential.
And do we know whether the applicant was including the residential in their request for 4, or they were? So maybe we're not that far off. So maybe all of this is a unnecessary discussion.
Counselor, I would urge you to reflect on this comment. You have been given extremely good advice by staff, and I'll say by me, advice that has been developed after very, very careful work, extensive work, and I would urge you to support the staff advice. And in the alternative, float an amendment.
I'm merely asking questions to
Okay.
make sure that we can make an informed decision, and I support the directions of
Okay.
the whole thing. This is not me trying to get in the way or cause trouble. This is me making sure that we don't accidentally cause trouble.
We're just holding you back, Tiger.
That's right.
All right, anyone else? Counselor O'Meara.
Thank you. Sorry, through your worship, I'm wondering if staff can just remind me, have we changed our parkland bylaw yet to reflect the 1 to 500?
No, we haven't, and I don't believe we are required to arbitrarily or retroactively. Bill 73 changes our requirements.
So I'm just wondering what the point in having that is, in having that, what the point is in having that in the recommendation anyway?
The point is that we're asking for cash in lieu. We're not asking for park land. So it's getting an agreement from council that it's a cash in lieu approach that we're going to take on this particular land, because I think, as Mr. Barrett had said, if we were looking at requiring land, it substantially changes the design, and that is a factor we'd need to understand from council at this point in time.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, if there's no one else, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. That brings us to 104 Burnett Street, item number 6. And I'm looking, Councillor Duddick is moving item 6. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Now, Council, I hope you've enjoyed this report, and Council, item number 7, the Committee of Adjustment Enhancements. And Councillor Duddick, this is where you would bring your additional concerns. And just to summarize from the Council's perspective for the public, Council has heard the public suggestions of improvements to the way the Committee of Adjustment works. And we have already seen improvements, and I have heard from the leaders of residents associations that they've noticed it as well. And for anyone who may still harbor a belief that you can't get anything done with government or you can't fight City Hall, I hope that they're reassured to learn that sometimes you can work with City Hall and get the result that you're looking for. So with that, I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you for your kind words, Your Worship, and members of council. I have the pleasure tonight of advising you of the great administrative enhancements that the mayor has been talking about. I'll just go through some key points that we have in our report. One of the things we heard from residents is that they did not have enough notice to go through an application. And the practice was we were giving notice around 12 days when the Planning Act requires 10. But the way it worked out was that they were sometimes only getting a weekend to review the applications, and that wasn't enough. So we tried to find ways to come up with some more time, and we managed to do that. Let me just go to here. So we were able to get 14 days notice for them. So we're able to get the notices out into the mail on Tuesdays, which gives them 2 weekends to review an application. And that was a big deal for them because they're not astute in some of these matters, and they really appreciated the extra time. And we heard this from them. They were really happy with that. That was one of our biggest cheers from them. One of the other things we heard was they needed better information or ways to get to the information. So we were able to move in to where council has their agendas and minutes and other committees on our agendas and minutes page, which you see there. So now all of the committee adjustment agendas and minutes show up there. And when you go on there, you will see the digital drawings that we've now requested from the applicants. So it's easier for them to review and have a look at things quickly. Another thing is that we've introduced a mapping application that we also introduced for our building permits, which allows residents to quickly view what applications are active in their own area. So they can go to the site, our maps tab right on our web homepage, and they're able to see all the applications that we have that are active. So ones that have gone through and passed the appeal period then drop off. But we do have something that our Director of Planning will talk to you about the ones that have dropped off. Another big thing that the residents really liked was our new notice sign. So you probably seen all the orange signs all over the place. So what we did now is we're using our Amanda program to generate the notice, which has a bit more information for the public. One of the things we heard was we know what they're asking for, but we don't know what the bylaw requirements were that they changed. So we managed to get that on to our notices. So again, we heard some good feedback on that they're able to go out to the site, see what they're asking for and what the bylaw requires. And then another little tidbit that we added is the QR code on the bottom left-hand corner there. So for people who are walking by, who want to view the agenda or the drawings and they have a smartphone or a tablet with them, they can scan the QR code and it will take them directly to the agenda page where they can look at the drawings of the application that's right standing in front of them. The other thing that we noticed and we looked at was our FAQs, and I looked at a few other municipalities and their FAQs, and a lot of them were geared towards, applicant questions. We didn't have a lot of stuff geared to the residents and the questions they have. So Kate Mihailovich, who's our dedicated planner to Committee of Adjustment, she should get the credit for coming up with our guide, and she's not here tonight. She did a great job in coming up with a guide, and I went today to try and get a couple, and I see we're running low in the building department. I think planning is running low, so they are a great success too, and it is on our website. So residents and applicants can go through that, and it explains the process in depth, and hopefully we answer a lot of the questions that they have on the applications that they see in front of them. The other thing I'm just going to quickly touch on is just stats from 2015. I think the committee heard approximately 240 applications. Most of them are in Ward 3 and Ward 2, as you can see from there. The majority of the 240, 198 of them are for single detached dwellings, and a couple of townhouses and apartments, and 35 non-residential applications. For the residential variances, our top 5 are yards, floor area, lot coverage, height, and garage gross floor area. For the non-residential, we had mostly landscaping, yards, and parking requests for variances. One of the other recommendations in the report is the passing of our new procedure bylaw that we're recommending. And there's 3 main changes that we've made to the bylaw. One is the addition of a provision for the live streaming of meetings. So we'll be doing that in the fall. Just like we're live streaming right now, we're going to be doing that for the Committee of Adjustment meetings. So we'll become more open and transparent, and people can watch from home, or if they're away and there's an application in their neighborhood, it allows them to view the proceedings as well. One of the things that we heard from residents groups was the time that an applicant has versus the time that they have to speak wasn't fair, and that an applicant gets 10 minutes and they only get 5 minutes. So we looked at various municipalities, and that's all over the map is what other people do. You know, I think we also spoke to our committee members, and they felt that going to the 5 minutes was probably not going to hinder the applicant that much either. So staff decided to give them both equal speaking time, and hopefully that will help both sides. The other change that we've done is with the absence section of the bylaw. And we worked with clerks and legal department on this one, and we're going to see a more uniform provision in the policy for citizens, boards, and committees so that they're all reflected the same way. And now I'm going to turn over the rest of the presentation to Mark.
Thanks. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Buildings, planning is closely aligned or thought of when you think of the community of adjustment, but in fact, it's in the buildings department. We're just sort of the guys down the hall. So we work closely with them, and we've been involved as well in some of the changes that you've been experiencing in the last year or so. So we, as it says on the slide, we hired a dedicated planner to the position in May of last year, and that replaced the system where it was sort of passed around the office. So what we didn't have there was consistency in terms of the review. And I guess by having Kate now there, it provides us that consistency that we didn't have before. A couple other things we've done as well. We've, I kind of have the process is different. We actually convene in my office the week before we're doing the comments. We get Google Earth up, and we go through the agenda, and we invite all the managers and all of the design planners to go through each and every item and make sure there's a consensus on what we're saying. So this way, the planning staff all own the outcome. First few meetings were very quiet. People were kind of staring at each other like, what are we doing here? But now they're lively, and there seems to be a good understanding of what we're trying to achieve with the committee adjustment. I think it was worthwhile just at the level of bringing the staff together. And for those ones that we're not 100% sure on, then a team goes out that week to further look at certain things in the neighborhood to make sure we got it right. So I think those are positive changes. I'll talk to you a bit about data. So there's dots on the map here. So starting in January of next year, we'll be able to go into, right now you only have the active applications, but all historical ones will be put online, and then we'll have another tool to see, you know, how many on the street did we have before, what were they for, what's this one like, what is that telling us, and that work will be completed by way of entering the historical data. That should be started in January. And then, as Elvio had pointed out, we can make queries into it. We can see historical trends. We can see by ward or by street or by type of application what we're doing. I think it'll be a useful tool for us to think historically when we're looking forward on the committee of adjustment. And we're using Amanda, of course, to identify trends. It's another tool in terms of the analysis. We can even look at the types of decisions that are being made by the committee and see if it's our policies that need to be looked at or something else. I think that's it, Elvio, in terms of the presentation. Yes, if there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Well, there's only 3 or 4. And they kind of start here with Councillor Hutchins and go to Councillor Giddings and Councillor Duddick.
Thank you for a very, very useful presentation. The Committee of Adjustment over the years has been a real issue for everybody. I know the town and I know resident associations. You've worked all extremely hard, and particularly Jane Closey and Mark Simeone and some of the other staff, as well as the resident associations. We've been to numerous meetings on this back and forward, and it's really taken a lot to hammer it out. I just want to make one other thing clear to everybody who's potentially here and watching. This is a process that will continue to evolve. This is not am I correct in this? Because I don't want to make assumptions here.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, this process will continually evolve. We're learning new things every time we get together. There's always better ways to do stuff. We're very open to that. I am certainly aware that the committee is an important body in the community, has a lot of interest, so we want to make sure we do our part to get it right.
Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Mark, you said that you thought it was a positive process. I can guarantee you it was a positive process. I speak for many of the councillors. When a neighbor sees the orange sign goes up, the phone calls start. A resident may go through the process once in their lifetime, whereas the proponents that come out and speak before the Committee of Adjustment go through it 100 times. And so given the constraints in terms of time, having the one weekend to look at it, and being unable to understand, well, it's not minor. I can tell you, as the rest of the councillors can, it's been a huge process. Thank you for the involvement with the Residents Association and the residents. There was an awful lot of work in the back channel with meetings, and you spent an awful lot of time with the residents and with Councillor Nick and I. So just want to thank you very much. It's been huge.
Thank you.
Councillor Dudek, your turn.
Oops, thank you, Your Worship. Just building upon that again, thank you very much for the positive improvements that have come along. They've been very well received. The taping was a very much appreciated issue. And along with the dedicated staff person, that was one of the key frustrations I used to have, is dealing with different planners. Even though we had districts, there was a different mindset, and as you say, looking through a common lens when evaluating and maybe identifying neighborhood trends earlier. Having that identified person, I think, is commendable. The one thing I didn't mention through the discussions we had previously, and I guess it builds to that it's an evolving process. Have we pursued requesting applicants to provide a 3D modeling of the impact of their proposal on the immediate either neighborhood or abutting properties? Because the majority of residents, even though they look at that orange sign and they see the increase or decrease that's being prepared or proposed rather, they can't visualize it and they have a difficulty, and then they almost feel that after the process, that's not what I thought I was getting. And so if we can do something towards that end to sort of assist them, that when they say yes or show support of something, they have the knowledge that they're not getting something other than what they had originally proposed.
Through Your Worship, so we have actually talked about that at length. So the tool we use is the Planning Act. It says a sketch. But that's not to say, as I've heard the mayor say, we can't ask for something extra in Oakville. So we're mindful of what that cost would be on every single application. Not everyone needs that level of detail. So we will use it when we think it's appropriate, and it's always something we can rely on.
And I noticed that you use plasticor now for the signs. When did that change, or has it been for a while? Because I've noticed several along Lakeshore that are now yellow. It's the cardboard, and yet someone in our neighborhood has one, it's plasticor, and it stood up much better. So I didn't know if that was also a new introduction.
Well, we through your worship, we changed last year when we went to the new signs. It could just be the ink. I think the old ones are still plasticor. It could just be the ink that the old signs were used. We tested these ones. We left them outside for 6 to 8 weeks, and they didn't fade, and neither did the ink on the white printed sheet.
Correct. Okay.
So they seem to work well.
Well done. The other thing that I was wondering about was you had mentioned about capturing information going forward and looking at what has transpired or taken place previously. When you show these charts here about the number of applications per ward, application type, and breakdown, that's for 2015. Is there any indication that we are increasing in the amount of variances or decreasing? I'm trying to see if there's a correlation between when our new zoning bylaw came in, similar to the DC bylaw. A lot of people make a rush for getting something in anticipation that the other isn't in force. So I just wondered if that's indicative of a trend as well.
Through Your Worship, good question, and we haven't looked at that, but we can, because the data's there. So once by the by January, hopefully that we'll be able to give that answer.
And again, it would also, to my way of thinking, assist with the neighborhood trends and maybe identify where we, we're going to be discussing this through Livable Oakville in the official plan review, so.
Yeah, if I may follow up through your worship, yes, that exactly my point. It'll be of great assistance when we're talking about the characters in the area, which ones had the variances, what for. That'll inform a lot of the what's going on, right? And through other, we'll walk the neighborhoods and all that kind of stuff. But that's a great way for us to be using that.
Thank you. Bravo.
Thank you, Councillor Duddick. Is that an indication that you'd like to be the one to move the staff recommendation?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comment? All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is adopted. Councillor Knoll, would you like to move deferral of confidential discussion item C9?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to do that.
And would you like to move it to the date certain of the September 6th Planning and Development Council meeting?
Well, actually, I was wondering that myself. I know that's the recommendation, but I'm thinking we just defer it and leave it up to the staff to make a determination when they bring it back.
What's your pleasure, Commissioner?
That way, if it has to be deferred again, we don't have to do this again.
Certainly, that would.
Yeah, so I'll just make it as deferral, subject to the being brought back at advice of staff.
Well, for belt and suspenders, maybe we just refer it to staff and make it
Even
bring it
better.
back.
Economy of words.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is adopted. Advisory committee minutes. There's a recommendation and minutes to be received. Councillor Duddick is moving the recommendation and the minutes. Discussion?
June
28th
28th and July 9th.
and July 19th. So right now, we're just doing Heritage Oakville,
Okay, so you have 8 and 10.
8 and 10. Right, Councillor? All in favor? Opposed, if any? They're adopted. Now, we come to the Livable Oakville item. The chair looks for a member. Councillor Elger moves the staff recommendation that's received. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. Council, we've reached the end of the work we have for ourselves now. The item 4 we'll pick up this evening, and so we're going to recess now, and then when we resume, we'll be in committee of the whole. So, see you soon. At 7 p.m. And that's, in case anybody's wondering, it's because we had given notice of that public hearing item for 7 p.m., so we're going to hold that hearing at 7 p.m., and then council will meet at 8. Because this is a day of meetings.
Mark, enjoy your time off. Trust me. Just let me.
All right, I'm going to call back into order the meeting we recessed earlier this afternoon, so that of the Planning and Development Council, so that we can turn now to the advertised public hearing on the Fernbrook Homes draft plan of subdivision. And if you'll give your attention to the podium, the application will be summarized for the public. Council, of course, has read it carefully and has all kinds of ideas about it. Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. A public meeting recommendation report has been provided for this draft plan of subdivision application. This presentation will provide a brief overview of the staff report, which can be found on page 15 to 28 of tonight's agenda. The subject lands are generally bound by Rebecca Street, Lakeshore Road West, and Maurice Drive. The development was granted conditional site plan approval on January 12th of this year. A separate draft plan of condominium application has also been submitted to permit a private road and other common elements. Staff expect to bring forward a separate recommendation report for this application in due course once the site plan design matters have been finalized. The subject draft plan of subdivision is related to creation of a block of land for 16 multiple attached dwelling units and allow the transfer of a road widening along Rebecca Street and Maurice Drive. Mr. Mayor and members of council, if I could draw your attention to block number 2, on the draft plan and block number 1, which are both road widenings, which I'll refer to later in the public comment section. Within the Livable Oakville plan, the subject lands are designated as medium density residential. The property is zoned H13 R8 Special Provision 809 under Zoning Bylaw 1984-63 and H8 RM1 Site Special Provision 22 under Zoning Bylaw 2014-14. The proposed development complies with both bylaws as varied. The holding provision relates to servicing of the lands and traffic impact prior to development taking place on the subject lands as conditionally approved through site plan application. It will be necessary to remove the holding provision from the lands. There have been a number of site plan related inquiries received from the public, including tree protection and preservation, building orientation and setbacks, and pedestrian circulation. Concern related to the plan of subdivision has also been submitted regarding road widening along Rebecca Street and the resulting impact on building setbacks. Staff have reviewed this concern and advised that as a condition of approval in Appendix C, a road widening along Rebecca Street will be taken, thereby aligning the frontage of the subject lands with the adjacent townhouse development to the west, which you can see on the image. Furthermore, the same general zoning provisions apply to both sites, requiring a minimum front yard setback of 3 meters. Based on the above, staff have included a recommendation that comments from the public have been appropriately addressed in satisfaction of the new requirements introduced through Bill 73. In conclusion, staff is satisfied that the application conforms to the overall policy direction of the Livable Oakville Plan and other relevant planning policy documents, and recommends approval of the application for the following reasons. The plan of subdivision meets the criteria established through the Planning Act. The proposed development conforms to the Livable Oakville Plan and complies with the zoning bylaw. Full circulation has been undertaken and there are no outstanding financial or planning issues to be resolved. And the development has been granted conditional site plan approval where site servicing, grading, stormwater management, landscaping, urban design, and financial obligations were addressed through conditions of site plan approval. Comments from the public have been appropriately addressed. And finally, the application for draft plan of subdivision is necessary to facilitate future land division into individual townhouse units and conveyance of road widenings along Rebecca and Maurice Drive to the town, and it is appropriate for the orderly development of the lands. In conclusion, Your Worship, staff put forth the following recommendation for Council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions of the presenter? Are there members of the public with information for Council on this matter? I'll restrict it to table. Councillor Duddick.
I was going to give you a motion to approve.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It is approved. Thank you very much. I believe, we did the Livable Oakville or not? Right, so now comes your favorite part of this process. We need a motion to rise and report to Council. Councillor Duddick's got the arm up, the first. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. A rise and report, the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 1, 2, and 3, confidential consent items 1 to 9.
Not including that.
Well, we referred it, so that's a decision, right? Yeah. And public hearing item 4, discussion items 5, 6, and 7, advisory committee minutes items 8, 9, and 10, as noted by the clerk. It would now be in order to have a mover and seconder for this report. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Grant, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Is there any member with new business of an emergency or congratulatory or condolence nature for us here? Thank you, Council. I wonder if we could have a mover and seconder for the bylaws. Councillor Lischina, thank you. Councillor Adams, thank you. It's a Ward 6 tour de force here. All those in favor, as printed in the agenda, and the bylaws are adopted. Well, that completes this agenda. It's been great working with you, and we are adjourned. See you at 8.